and I will be the presenter today for this webinar, Ethical Issues from the St. Francis Dam Collapse. If any of you are not receiving the audio stream, why, let me know. Couple of housekeeping items. The way the webinars move forward here is I press on with the discussion for 50 minutes, then we take a 10-minute break, come back, do another 50 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, 10 minutes. And this just being a 2 PDH or 2-hour webinar, we'll just run through that cycle 2 times. And the PowerPoints that we'll be looking at today, I believe that you can get a copy of them from PDH Source by going to their website, logging into your account, following the instructions, and you should be able to download a copy of these PowerPoints. And they might be kind of interesting to have moving forward. So here we go with ethical issues from the St. Francis Dam collapse. And here's kind of what I'll be talking about today, sort of the chapters in the book. Let's see, give me just a moment here. I want to play with my controls. Yeah, okay. Okay, so a few introductory comments. Chapter 2, we'll look at what happened, and then we will look at the historical context of this project, how it came into being. And that's important because the historical events, I don't think there's any question, they were the cause of the collapse of the dam and the ethical issues that were illuminated by that. I'll then kind of take a detour off to the side and talk a little bit about a way of looking at people's behavior, the human factors. And I think that's relevant, significantly relevant in this situation. More about that later as we move forward. Then, okay, after all of that, what are the ethical issues that are raised by this incident? And I will have my comments on that. Now, these ethical issues webinars, there is certainly plenty of room for differences of opinion. And it's not like the technical kind of webinars that I do, where there's really nothing to argue about or discuss. There's a right way and a wrong way, and you need to do it the right way. That's with the technical issues webinars, but ethical issues, there's room for differences of opinion. There may be some who would have opinions that are different from mine, and that's fine. And then chapter 6, lessons learned. Did we as an engineering profession learn from this incident? And my short answer is yes, and I'll talk about that more as we move forward. So this is kind of, as I say, sort of the chapters in the book. And here, by way of introduction, is a little bit about me and what I've been doing for the last few decades. For 35 years, I was what I characterize as a straight-ahead designer, cranking out drawings and specs for the construction of facilities of one sort or another, ranging from extremely large down to small. And for the first 17 years of that 35-year adventure, I was with a large public agency as an employee, the state of California. And I then had an opportunity to start my own private architectural engineering firm. And so I resigned from the state. For the next 18 years. I managed that, and our projects there were in the medium to small size. And then following that 18-year adventure, I then had an opportunity to do something that I had always been interested in, which was to become involved in the public policy arena, where I had a principal staff position on the staff of the California legislature, where I was an advisor on capital outlay and infrastructure projects. I got registered in a few different things along the way. I'm basically a mechanical engineer. That's my degree and my first registration. Even though being basically a mechanical engineer, even a mechanical engineer could understand what went wrong on this project. So don't hold that against me, hopefully. Okay, now moving forward. Here's what we're talking about. It took place in 1928, quite a while ago, obviously. Nevertheless, certainly well within our technological horizon, you might say. And this was on March 12th at almost midnight in 1928. The St. Francis Dam, which was an important element in the Los Angeles aqueduct, and I'll talk more about this later as we move forward, uh, failed. It was, the dam was designed and constructed by the City of Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, its predecessor organization. And I want to say right up front here that LA Water and Power is today and has been for many years a very highly competent professional organization, and has designed and constructed all kinds of infrastructure down in the LA region. But the entity that was in existence back in 1928 was a predecessor of the LA Water and Power. And the St. Francis Dam was designed and constructed by LA Water and Power to create a reservoir to store water that was brought to it through the Los Angeles aqueduct from the Owens Valley in East Central California. It was a concrete gravity. It's sometimes characterized as an arch dam. It looks like it's curved, looks like an arch dam, but it really isn't. It was a concrete gravity dam. The only thing keeping the dam in place was its weight. It was located about 40 miles northwest of Los Angeles on San Francisco Creek, which is near the present day city of Santa Clarita, California, the northern rim of the Los Angeles basin there. At 11:57 p.m., the dam, almost midnight, collapsed catastrophically, releasing 12 billion gallons of floodwaters downstream. The floodwaters reached a depth of 140 feet. That's getting pretty close to 10 to 15 stories high, with average water velocities estimated at 26 feet per second, which, as water goes, that's that's really moving. And by 5:30 a.m. later that day on March 13th, the floodwaters reached the Pacific Ocean at a town called Montalvo, which is near Ventura, California, which is north of Los Angeles. And the flood killed more than 450 people. Some estimates go as high as 650 people. I'll talk more about the uncertainties here as far as the number of deaths are concerned a little further on. And it is generally recognized as the worst civil engineering failure in US history. Now, someone pointed out to me actually just a few days ago, and I knew this anyway, but that an earlier event called the Johnstown flood, which took place back in the middle of the 19th century, the 1800s, there were more fatalities when that dam, I forget the name of the dam, but it failed. Uh, but that really wasn't a civil engineering failure. The civil engineering as a profession had only begun to develop. ASCE was uh, created about 30 or 40 years before the Johnstown flood. And really, the Johnstown flood was just a matter that the uh, entities that owned it didn't maintain it. And it was not a civil engineering failure. So it's pretty fair to say that the uh, St. Francis Dam failure is the worst civil engineering failure in history. Another data point, for what it's worth, is the Twin Towers situation in New York City. There were more fatalities with that incident, but that was not a civil or structural engineering failure. The buildings were never designed to resist being flown into by airliners. So that was not an engineering failure, civil or structural. So this was a major consideration. And just backing up just a tiny bit as far as my own experience in the dam business. The first 10 years of when I got out of school, when I was with this large public agency, the state of California, I was engaged along with a couple thousand other engineers in the design and construction of what I am told is one of the two man-made things that an astronaut can see from space. The first of the two is the Great Wall of China, and I did not work on that one. The other one is the California State Water Project, which is a 500-mile long collection of dams, power plants, reservoirs, aqueducts, every conceivable kind of a hydraulic control structure that moves water from Northern California down the central spine of California and distributes it in Central and Southern California. And so I did have the opportunity to have some hands-on involvement in dam design. I was in the power plants end of things, but a power plant, of course, is something that almost always goes along with a dam. And one of those dams that was one that I had a great deal of involvement with was the largest dam in the United States, possibly even in the world, although the Chinese have been doing some really impressive things in recent years. The Oroville Dam, the highest and the largest dam in the world. And so I had an opportunity to observe that dam being designed and constructed. And then I was involved directly with the power plant at Oroville, and a second one just downstream at a place called Thermalito. So anyway, here is a picture of what we're talking about. The St. Francis Dam. Shortly after it was completed, construction was completed. And you see there does appear to be some curvature to the dam. There is curvature to the dam, but it's not a concrete arch dam. It's a gravity dam. The only thing holding that dam in place is its weight. Okay, so now I'm back in. Um, okay, now we're having audio problems. The problem is can you hear me? Can you, okay, all right, I was getting bad. echoes. I'm still getting bad echoes. Oh, okay. You're right. Okay, I'm going to sign off the phone. Okay. Um, Now I'm hoping that you can hear me now. Uh, and okay, I'm hoping that you can hear me now and that you can see my screen. Um, can somebody tell me if you can hear me now? Hello? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
Paul. Paul.
Hello?
Paul, you're good. Go ahead, please.
Um, okay, I just wrote a message in the chat box. Can you hear me? So can somebody now? Someone says that the image is gone. Uh, okay, now the image should be back. Okay, so Gregory says, yes, I can hear you. And others are saying that the image is back. Okay, I don't know exactly why we had that little problem. But anyway, I wanted to back up and give you a little more of the history. And what it is a history of water wars in California. And they've gone on for decades, if not generations. And there is an old saying that in California that whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. And the history of California is of the different regions, because it's a big state, fighting over the water that is available. And there is a lot of it. So the story kind of starts back in the 1890s down in Los Angeles. And back in the 1890s, Los Angeles was a little town of about 50,000 people. That was the whole population there. And the people who were there, um, they looked around at all of the terrific uh, elements they had in living there in Southern California. Beautiful weather, gorgeous beaches, really great, except for one thing, and that is that there's no water there. The Los Angeles basin is a natural desert. And so the people, the small number of people in Los Angeles back in the 1890s uh, said, well, look, we've got this great location. We need to get some water here so that the region can grow and support the population that we know is going to be coming in. And so they looked around at where they might get water from, and one of the places they looked for possibly getting water was the Colorado River, which is the border between California and Arizona. And they looked very hard at building an aqueduct to take water from the Colorado River to Los Angeles. That didn't play out hardly at all because of legal difficulties that arose, and the story kind of ended up that Arizona got most of the Colorado River water, and of course other states were involved in that, California, Colorado, Nevada, and Mexico. And so the people in Los Angeles back in the 1890s ended up figuring out that they weren't going to be able to get water from the Colorado River. So that another place they looked for getting water was in the in Inyo County, and uh, this is a sparsely populated county on the eastern slopes of the Sierras, right adjacent to Nevada. And it happens the way things go that there's quite a bit of uh, water that flows into Inyo County. And so the uh, people and folks in Los Angeles, using what are pretty well recognized as kind of sneaky methods, uh, went into Inyo County, bought up the land under false names and under the pretext that they were just ranchers looking for some ranch land, and they were buying up ranches and land, and along with the land comes the water rights, and they were successful. The Los Angeles interests were successful in buying up a large part of the land in Inyo County, and and along with that came the water rights for a lot of water. And so Los Angeles then undertook to build an aqueduct from, it's about 300 miles long, from Inyo County to Los Angeles. And this aqueduct was a combination of pipelines and canals and this sort of thing. And to move the water from Inyo County to Los Angeles. Now, one of the realities of designing water resources projects, you're trying to control water, and the amount of water you have depends on the weather during the season, the snow melt, and things like that. So it's variable. Also, where you are going to use the water uh, at the end of the pipeline, at the end of the Los Angeles County, oh, pardon me, of the Los Angeles aqueduct, you need to have a control mechanism. And that in water resources jargon is a dam with a reservoir. You store the water and you can then release it to be used by urban and agricultural and commercial interests as is needed. And so you need, at the end of this aqueduct, the Los Angeles aqueduct, that the Los Angeles interests uh, designed, constructed, they needed to have a regulating dam. And the point at which they determined to locate this dam was on San Francisco Creek, and that is the site of this St. Francis Dam that we're talking about. Now, there's also more kind of, uh, you might say, skullduggery got involved, because back at that time, the extending north out of the small town of Los Angeles was the San Fernando Valley, and a large, very fertile agricultural area that they needed water for, the landowners needed water for. And the Los Angeles interests, kind of under the radar, bought up the land in the San Fernando Valley, but they needed to have water for agricultural purposes. And they uh, uh, for practical reasons, they wanted to have this regulating reservoir, St. Francis Dam on San Francisco Creek, be the site that was the terminus of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. So then they would have the water right there to use for agricultural purposes for their agricultural interests, and then also for the urban interests as they were to develop in Los Angeles and its surrounding area. And so that's the way this project looked. Um, Inyo County, that's where the water is. You build an aqueduct to take that water from Inyo County to Los Angeles, where it terminates at the St. Francis Dam. And the St. Francis Dam regulates the release of the water to the San Fernando Valley for agricultural purposes and to the still relatively small urban encampment in Los Angeles. Now, just as a side uh, aspect, the project that I was involved in, the California State Water Project, was part of this political interplay in California, because as Los Angeles developed, the Los Angeles Aqueduct uh, did not have enough water to satisfy the needs of the burgeoning Los Angeles metropolitan area, which of course we all know what it is today. So the political wheels went into motion, and the California State Water Project came into being, taking water from Oroville Dam, which was to be constructed, and then also a federal dam complex, Shasta Dam. And the water flows in a natural river, the Sacramento River, down to near Stockton, and then the California Aqueduct takes it from there and runs it down to Los Angeles. So in other words, the Los Angeles Aqueduct and the California State Water Project were both to a very large degree driven by the growth of the population in the Los Angeles region. Um, anyway, but backing up into the 1920s, the construction of this St. Francis Dam was begun in 1924. And construction was underway. And shortly after construction was started, the person, and I'm using the singular here, and you'll understand why as I move along. The person in charge of the Los Angeles Aqueduct and the St. Francis Dam decided to increase the storage capacity of the dam by raising the height of the dam 10 feet. And this increased the storage capacity of the reservoir about 10%. So, but no changes were made in any other aspects of the dam. And you'll see some pictures later on here that'll make clear why, if you increase the height of a dam, you need to make some fundamental changes in the configuration of the dam, particularly a, a gravity dam, where the only thing that's holding it in place is its weight. So the capacity of the dam, the height of the dam was raised 10 feet with no appropriate compensating changes to the design configuration of the dam, and construction continued. And then it was decided, well, heck, we raised the height of the dam 10 feet, let's raise it another 10 feet. And so when the dam was about half completed, the height was raised another 10 feet. Again, without any compensating changes to fundamental geometry of the dam. So that was a key mistake. Uh, so uh, two change orders, if you will, increased the height of the dam 20 feet, and there were no compensating changes made to the basic geometry of the dam. And this is back in the 1920s. Construction is underway. 1926 and 27. Temperature and contraction cracks were observed in the dam with leakage in the dam. And the uh, person in charge of the design and construction of the dam looked at the cracks and the leaks and said they were nothing to worry about, that this happened all the time with concrete dams. And yes, concrete does crack and it does leak. It may leak, but you have to control the cracking and the leaking. But the person who was in charge of the design and construction of the dam uh, did not appreciate the seriousness of what he was looking at. So through 1927 and 1928, the reservoir continues to fill. The water level is rising. And in March of 1928, the reservoir reached its full capacity, its full height, and the cracks and the leaks continued to exist and get worse. And on the morning of March 12th, the dam keeper, this is for those of you who may not be quite familiar with the terminology that's used in the industry. The dam keeper is the guy who's in charge of a dam. And he and his staff discovered substantive leaks and reported it to the LA Department of Water and Power's management, basically one individual. And again, that individual came out, looked at the leaks, and said that they were minor and they were normal for a concrete dam, and he pronounced the dam safe. Here's the dam when it's completed, and it was only completed for a very short time before it failed. 3 minutes before midnight on March 12th, as previously noted, 1928, the dam collapsed catastrophically. And one of the realities of this incident is that it took place in the middle of the night in a very remote area, and nobody saw it happen, or those who did see it uh, ended up as fatalities. And so there was no one out there with 8mm movie cameras filming the collapse or anything like that, and there simply was no time to do that. And anyway, this link URL that you see here, if you want to uh, look at it, it shows it's an animated reconstruction of the dam break, and you see the water uh, flowing, out of the reservoir and downstream. And but again, it's an animation. Here is another picture of the dam. Now, the water that you see coming out of the dam, that's not a leak, that's an outlet works, releasing water downstream into the San Francisco Creek for the use of the water users downstream. And you notice that that water is being released through an outlet works very high on the dam. And one of the realities of dam design uh, work is that you should have a low level outlet works uh, on a dam for emergency releases so that if the dam starts cracking and looks like it's going to fail, you can open up the outlet works and uh, draw down the reservoir, take the strain off the dam, and the dam does not fail. But that feature was not included in this dam. All that was included was a high level outlet works. So this dam could not be drawn down in an emergency. And here is a picture of the dam after it failed. And this is all that was left. And you can see that is a massive, the only thing that's left is this massive block of concrete, and everything else is gone. Now, here is a good illustration of the issue of raising the dam height without increasing the geometry of the cross section of the dam. In other words, increasing the base dimension so that you would have a greater moment resisting overturning of the dam as a result of the increased overturning moment being exerted by the water on the upstream surface of the dam. So um, to a very large degree, the technical reason for the dam failing was increasing the height of the dam 20 feet and not increasing the base dimension of the dam so as to provide a greater resisting moment. Here are blocks of concrete downstream from the failure. And if you look closely, you can see there are two people standing there. And that gives you a good idea of the scale involved and how massive these concrete blocks were. Here is a picture of the west abutment of the dam, and an important consideration in the failure was that the soil conditions at the abutments were completely unsatisfactory. The dam never should have been built at this location, but the interests that controlled the project, they wanted the dam built at this location um, because they had bought up all of this uh, rich agricultural land in the San Fernando Valley, and they wanted the water for their agricultural uses. And so the economic and political and commercial interests dictated that the dam be built at this site, but the soil conditions were unsatisfactory, and the dam never should have been built at this site. There are earthquake faults. You can see that kind of crack there in the soil. That's an earthquake fault. That's a void. That's a weak plane in the soil. Now, here to further illustrate the magnitude of this failure, here is a power plant that was downstream of the dam. And you see the penstocks, the big pipes running down the hillside, taking water from the reservoir and dropping it into a hydroelectric power plant, which is the large building that you see there. And this is a picture after the dam failed. And you see that the building structure is completely gone. The penstocks are still there. You see a couple of little, looks like pieces of machinery sitting there on the ground. Well, what those actually are the generators from the power plant. And here you see with the people in the picture providing some scale, you see those are very big pieces of machinery. And the entire powerhouse structure is gone. Here are a few more photos of downstream uh, uh, construction, or if you can call it that. Now, downstream, the reason I said at the start that there was uncertainty about the total number of fatalities. And the reason is this was an agricultural area downstream of the dam. And there were a lot of what would be characterized as farm labor camps or very small towns. And things being the way they were back at that point in time, a lot of the people living in these camps and these towns were illegal immigrants. So nobody knew exactly how many people were downstream when the dam broke. But this is where the overwhelming number of fatalities took place, is in these small farm labor camps and small towns between the dam site and the Pacific Ocean. And so uh, for those of you who may be interested in an in-depth kind of technical postmortem discussion of the failure, here's a link to a report done by a professor at the Missouri School of Technology. And it's a very well done report, very thorough. And it uh, may be of interest, can be of interest. But the short answer is the dam never should have been built at that location because the soil conditions were unsatisfactory. And the the official death toll immediately after the break was 385, but bodies over a period of years, even into the 1950s, continued to wash ashore from the ocean, Pacific Ocean, and so the current estimates is there were more than 600 fatalities. The investigation into the cause of the failure was undertaken. The official entity in charge was the Los Angeles Coroner's Office, which kind of sounds a little funny, but it that's the way it was done. And the coroner's investigation determined that responsibility for the disaster lay with the governmental organizations which oversaw the dam's construction and the dam's designer and engineer, William Mulholland. And Mulholland had all-consuming control over the project. He was the chief engineer of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power as it existed at that time. He had overseen the design and construction of the Los Angeles aqueduct from Inyo County to Los Angeles. And that was a very significant project, and it was completed satisfactorily, and that is to Mulholland's credit. You probably are familiar with this name from watching television shows and movies filmed in Los Angeles, because the bad guys always get away on Mulholland Drive down in LA. In any event, he's a real legend in the Los Angeles area, but his reputation was very, very badly damaged as a result of the failure of the St. Francis Dam. Okay, here are a few more little pictures of the damage. Lifted up the railroad tracks and just moved them. More highway damage. And now we're here 10 minutes before the hour. So this is a good breaking point. So let's stop and take a 10-minute break, and I'll come back on the hour, and we'll pick up here and talk about what I believe is relevant as far as the way people behave. So I'll see you all in 10 minutes on the hour. And I'm back, and so if anyone is having any problems with either the audio or the video, let me know, but I'll assume that you can hear me. Now I want to kind of step to the side and talk about what I think is relevant to this incident, and it's some generic discussion, one might say, of how people behave. And this is not anything that I dreamed up, but I've come across this way of looking at things over the years, and it correlates nicely, really, with what I have observed over the years. And that is that there are fundamentally two kinds of people in the world. Linear thinkers, they're characterized as, and non-linear thinkers. Again, this is not anything that I dreamed up. It's pretty well recognized when you're talking about how people behave. And so, and I'll talk more about the linear thinkers and the nonlinear thinkers as we go along. But the getting back on the historical track, late 1800s, a major mover and shaker in the undertaking to get water from the Owens Valley in Inyo County was a gentleman named Frederick Eaton, who was elected mayor of Los Angeles in the late 1890s. Again, pretty small town mayor. And meanwhile, in Ireland, William Mulholland was born and grew up, and left Ireland at an early age. He was not educated in the sense of, no college, no engineering school. I don't know if he even had the equivalent of a high school education in Ireland, but he left Ireland, as many people did back at that time, for economic reasons, when he was about 17, and emigrated to the United States, as did many Irish. And so a young man from Ireland landed on the East Coast, got labor type laboring jobs, unskilled laboring jobs on the East Coast, moved across the country and ended up in Los Angeles, where he got a job for the Los Angeles Water Company, which later became the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And Eaton was mayor, therefore in charge of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And Mulholland went to work for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power as what is referred to in the literature as a ditch digger. And that's not my words, that's taken from the literature. He was an unskilled or an untrained laborer. The way things worked in Los Angeles back at that time, before the completion of the Los Angeles Aqueduct and the State Water Project, is that there was a certain amount of water available to Los Angeles as runoff from the Tehachapi and some other mountains down there and around the Los Angeles basin. And this water was captured and channeled into ditches. And that water was then distributed around the Los Angeles basin to the extent that it was, amounted to much. And Mulholland was hired to maintain these ditches and keep that water flowing. So that's the picture. Frederick Eaton, a political gentleman, mayor of Los Angeles, and Mulholland essentially went to work for Eaton, and they both Eaton and Mulholland liked to characterize themselves as self-taught engineers. Neither one of them had any engineering training. And most importantly, the thing that was missing, I believe, is they did not have an understanding of the underlying physics that's involved, the rules of what you are undertaking to do. And the this is where the issue of linear and nonlinear thinkers comes into play, I believe. And that I believe that the people by and large fall into one basket or the other. There may be a very small number that have some characteristics of both baskets, linear thinkers and nonlinear thinkers, but most people fit quite comprehensively into one or the other of these baskets. And the linear thinkers are driven by rules. They have a given situation that they are faced with. They are at point A, and they apply rules, and that leads them to the conclusion that they should be at point B. And in the case of engineers, engineers are classic linear thinkers. They apply rules, and that leads them to the conclusions that they arrive at. And the rules that engineers apply are the rules of physics: gravity, hydraulics, statics, kinematics, yada, yada, yada. All of the stuff that we learned in college. And that's how engineers function, by applying rules, the rules of physics. Now, there are other types of people who are also linear thinkers. Medical doctors, I think, are another good example. They have a patient who is at point A, is displaying such and such symptoms, and they apply the rules of human biology, and that leads them to treat the patient so that uh, he arrives at point B. Uh, there are other types of people that, or occupations, if you will, that are the province of linear thinkers. Accounting is an example. There are the rules of accounting, how to do your accounting, this sort of thing. And accountants apply those rules, and that leads them to reach their conclusions. Uh, any of the hard sciences, chemistry, physics, etc., same thing. Those people are linear thinkers. They are driven by rules. But the other basket is the nonlinear thinkers. And they react like this illustration. Um, they don't care about the rules. They are at point a nonlinear thinker is at point A, and if he applied the rules, he would end up at point B. But that's not where the nonlinear thinker wants to be. He wants to be at point C. And so a nonlinear thinker basically will do anything he can get away with uh, to arrive at point C. That's his goal. And these people are frequently referred to as goal oriented, which sounds good, but the problem is that they ignore applicable rules in order to achieve their goal. And there are uh, uh, people that just fit into this nonlinear thinker category. People in sales are commonly nonlinear thinkers. They don't care about any rules that may exist of one sort or another. They want to make the sale, and they'll do whatever they can to make the sale. Um, Politicians are classic examples of nonlinear thinkers. A politician, a nonlinear thinker, is at point A. He's got elected, managed to get elected to the local school board, but he wants to be president of the United States or governor of California or whatever. And he will do whatever he can get away with without going to jail. And there are a number of, over years of history, there have been a significant number of nonlinear thinkers that, in truth and in fact, do break rules, do go to jail. The Bernard Madoff syndrome, as an example. So this is a nonlinear thinker. Has a subjective. In the situation we're talking about, the objective is to get water from the Owens Valley to Los Angeles and do whatever is necessary to achieve that objective. And in this incident we're talking about, the objective was to get the water to a reservoir on the San Francisco Creek, so that it would be available for agricultural development and later for massive urban development in the San Fernando Valley. And so this would be a nonlinear thinker, a politician, and lawyers are an example. They their objective is to win a case so that they can get paid, and they will do whatever they can to win the case. So you had the key actors in this story: Frederick Eaton, a politician, uh, and William Mulholland, who was was not a politician in the sense of running for offices and this sort of thing, but apparently he was a good uh, bureaucratic manipulator, player, and but he was not neither one of them, even though they liked to characterize themselves as self-trained engineers. In truth and in fact, they were not trained. They were not trained in the physics that underlies um, engineering, which is what we do. And as a result, they just did not have any appreciation of some the rules, if you will, of soil mechanics. That uh, uh, you can't just take a great big heavy structure like a dam and set it down on soil without knowing the capacity of the soil to support the structure. And this is where the whole enterprise came apart, is that Eaton and Mulholland were nonlinear thinkers. They were in charge of a project, an engineering project that absolutely required a very high level of linear thinking on the part of the decision makers and the managers. And but the project was very tightly controlled by Mulholland with direction from Eaton. Put the dam here because that's where I want the dam. Um, so Frederick Eaton, uh, politician, uh, and not in any way a trained engineer. Um, and Mulholland, as I think about him, I, I I kind of tend to think that his skill level was probably about that what we today would call an engineering technician. In other words, someone who knows a lot about a very narrow area of technical enterprise. Mulholland knew a lot about how to maintain uh, water distribution ditches or channels. Uh, but that was the extent of his competence. He had not had any training in the underlying physics involved in a project of the size and scope of the St. Francis Dam. So, as I said, he was born in Ireland, and at an age of 15, he left and immigrated to the U.S. Arrived in Los Angeles in 1877, and he got a job for the predecessor of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which was called the Los Angeles Water Company. And Frederick Eaton, in addition to having been the mayor of Los Angeles, was the chief executive of the Los Angeles Water Company. And uh, the Los Angeles Water Company was subsequently transmogrified, if you will, into the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. And Mulholland, Eaton arranged for Mulholland to be the the chief engineer of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. So Mulholland and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power undertook to construct the 233-mile Los Angeles aqueduct to bring water from the Owens Valley to Los Angeles. That was a large project and was completed appropriately to Mulholland's credit and fame. But they when they got to the St. Francis Dam point, in other words, to locate the end, the terminus of the Los Angeles aqueduct for commercial interests, Eaton wanted it located in the San Fernando Valley, the north part of the Los Angeles basin. At Eaton and Mulholland essentially controlled the project completely. There was very little there was no organizational structure as I think back to development of the California State Water Project and the dams and power plants and so on and so forth. We had so many levels of participation and review in engineering decisions that it was a big undertaking, and we had consultant review boards. We had consultants from other entities. A great deal of the expertise in water resources development and dams and power plants lies in the Army Corps of Engineers and the Bureau of Reclamation, the Department of the Interior. And we had people, high-level people with a great deal of experience as consultants on everything that we were doing in the State Water Project. But that was not the case with the St. Francis Dam. It was a one-man show. The coroner's inquest. This is the post-mortem, the investigation. How did this incident come about? And the hang on a second. I want to play with my play with my controls. So the coroner's inquest found that the failure of the St. Francis Dam was due to unsatisfactory soil conditions at the site. There had not been a comprehensive subsurface soil investigation undertaken, which is absolutely essential anytime that you're going to undertake to construct a large structure like a dam, because it has to be supported on the soil. And in walking around down a dusty road, we think of the soil as being nice and solid, but in reality it isn't, because of groundwater conditions, because of earthquake faults, et cetera, et cetera. And the soil is not uh, just a solid mass. So the coroner's inquest found that the failure of the dam was due to unsatisfactory soil conditions at the site, and these should have been uh, identified by a comprehensive subsurface soil investigation program prior to making the decision to site the dam at that location. This was not done, and it was not done in my way of looking at it because of the commercial and political pressures uh, exerted by Frederick Eaton and his powerful associates there in the Los Angeles community, because they wanted the dam at that location for their commercial purposes. And so the subsurface soils conditions were not investigated. The coroner's inquest also found that the failure was due to the failure to compensate for the additional 20 feet added to the height of the dam. And you saw that rather nicely, I think, in that one photograph of the cross section of the dam. The 20 feet was just piled up on top of the dam without any increase in the base dimension of the dam, of the cross section of the dam, which would have allowed for greater resisting moment to be exerted by the weight of the dam, uh, and there was no compensation for the additional 20 feet in the height of the dam. And third, the coroner's inquest found that the design and construction was overseen by only one person, Mulholland. And the that was the conclusions of the coroner's inquest, and it, to my way of looking at it, they seem completely logical and appropriate. So what were the ethical issues? Well, first of all, there was inadequate technical leadership of the project. It was controlled and directed by Mulholland with political support from his mentor, Eaton. And again, both Eaton described himself as a self-taught engineer, as did Mulholland. But investing a responsibility for major engineering projects in self-taught engineers is irresponsible for a couple of reasons. The first is that they have not been trained in the underlying physics that controls what you do in the engineering arena, and that is essential. And then the fact that politicians, if you will, Eaton, more of a traditional politician who got elected for this or that, and Mulholland more as a bureaucratic politician. Apparently a nice guy, and knew how to work the levers in a bureaucracy. But neither one of them had any training or understanding of the uh, underlying physics, and they, from the record, it appears they were very much nonlinear thinkers. In other words, they were goal oriented, and don't confuse me with facts. This is what I want. I want the dam located on San Francisco Creek. And uh, the and the project in that day and time was structured without any diversity of technical input, and no uh, community of competent engineers to review the design at all stages as it moved forward. And Mulholland, after the failure, it it really apparently very much affected him personally. Uh, he publicly accepted the blame, and it was his alone, which and he accepted that. Um, there's some comment in the literature that as a way of kind of making excuses that, well, the science of soil mechanics at that point in time was sparse and was limited because of insufficient exploration and testing. Well, yes, it certainly was the limited exploration and testing that was done uh, prevented any kind of knowledge of the soil conditions. But the way you get around that is you get out there with a drill rig and you drill your test holes and your test pits and things like that. And then you take those soil samples into the lab and test them for compressive strength and shear strength and so on and so forth. And there were plenty of dams throughout the world at that point in time who had been, which had been designed and constructed, and where an adequate soil exploration program had been conducted before the decision was made on where the dam should be built. And the knowledge of soil mechanics was not that limited back then, because simply there were too many dams that had been designed and built prior to this dam being designed and built. And some of these earlier dams were built a long time before this dam was built. So the statement that an excuse is that there was sparse knowledge of soil conditions at the site. Yes, that is true, but that knowledge should have been expanded through an exploration program, and it was not. The Again, the location of the dam appears to have been very much dictated by commercial and political interests. So inadequate technical leadership. The uh, the leaders of this project, Mulholland and Eaton, were not did not have adequate technical training, and the organizational structure of the Department of Water and Power as it existed at that point in time was such that it was one man in charge of the project, Mulholland, and he was taking his guidance from Frederick Eaton. Um, and so the inadequate technical leadership, the project should not have been undertaken under the leadership of a gentleman who was not a trained professional engineer. Um, the This incident here in California uh, was a very strong driver in the establishment of engineering registration in California, and it so that is a benefit that has come out of this incident. Insufficient diversity of technical input. In other words, it was all Mulholland controlling the project, making the decisions. Mulholland goes out, looks at the cracks and the leaks that have developed in the dam while it was being constructed, and his finding was final that the cracks and the leaks were just something that happens regularly with concrete dams, and that it's nothing to worry about. But there was no one else in the organizational structure to question Mulholland's judgment. So the 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 technical reasons for the failure, in my view, were the failure to determine the soil conditions at the site through an appropriate exploration program, the failure when the question of raising the dam 20 feet came up. Mulholland's guidance was simply that go ahead and raise it 20 feet, the height of the dam, and we don't have to make any changes in the geometry of the cross section of the dam. And of course, that could very well have been driven by economic considerations, because if you're going to increase the base dimension of a gravity dam like that, you're going to need a lot more concrete, which means a lot more money. And the the lessons that were learned here in California, first of all, the um, substantive engineering projects and programs must be controlled by competent engineering professionals who have the training in the underlying rules of physics, and also who are rule-driven people. That's what engineers are. That's just the way it is. The people that go into engineering, like people who go into medicine or uh, accounting, these are rule-driven people. That's the way they operate, and that's the way it should be. But putting an untrained individual, two of them, Mulholland and Eaton, in charge of an engineering project, it was completely inappropriate. And as I said, here in California, the this incident uh, uh, was a major factor in the development of engineering registration laws in California, and requirements that major engineering projects must be uh, under the direction of trained, registered professional engineers. And the and the distinction needs to again be made between professional training and technical experience. As I characterize it, an engineering technician has technical experience, often a great deal of detailed technical experience in a very small, narrow area. And the engineering technician is a highly valued member of the engineering design and construction team. But the engineering technician doesn't have the fundamental training in applied physics. And this brings up another point that is important, I believe, because I've had an opportunity to observe this over many years. In an organizational setting, particularly in government bureaucracies, but also in private company bureaucracies, there's kind of pushing and shoving that goes on for control of engineering projects. They are they're often very prestigious, and often I have observed in a government bureaucracy, um, untrained individuals will try to get control over an engineering project. And I've seen this fail uh, in a government bureaucracy environment, and in a lesser extent in private companies, is that engineers need to be trained, if you will, on how to compete for control of engineering projects, because at some point in time in an engineer's career, they may well be in a position where a non-engineer is trying to get control over an engineering project, and that should not be allowed to happen. And engineers need to develop the personal skills, if you will, the ability to operate effectively within an organization, a government bureaucracy or a private company bureaucracy, and to compete to assure that engineering projects are controlled by appropriately trained professional engineers. And that brings us kind of to the end of our discussion today, and kind of my story, if you will. And it may be that there are some who have different opinions from what I've just had to say, and that's fine. There's plenty of room. Now let me see. Let me check my chat box here. I got a lot of chats in here. Let's see. Please type your Q or comments here, etc., etc. Okay, I don't see any questions. If any of you have any, it'd probably be just as easy to speak right up on the audio stream. Does anybody have any thoughts about this? Did anything I say make any sense? Did Mulholland retire after the dam failure? Yes. And what was the prevalence of soil mechanics in that time period? If there was an understanding of the importance of soil mechanics, compressive strength, shear strength, and I'm not a soils guy, but one of the things that would have been clearly made apparent by a drilling program is the presence of earthquake faults. And it was known that at that time that California was pretty riddled up and down the state with earthquake faults. And of course, an earthquake fault is a void in the soil. So if you put a big heavy structure on top of it, it squashes and it fails. So even though Mulholland was very, as I understand it from the reading of the history, was very much psychologically and emotionally damaged and destroyed by the incident, and he immediately retired and withdrew, so his reputation, though, continued. And I don't mean to sound belittling. His reputation continues with all of those TV shows and movies where the bad guy gets away on Mulholland Drive. Estimate of the dollar value of the damage. Boy, I don't know now that any estimate. Did Mulholland become a linear thinker? I think from my reading, he just basically withdrew into himself. And you can't become Kim says the east side was founded on a prior landslide. Yeah, that's a point that I did not, hadn't really registered with me, but he was very powerful politically, and he was protected certainly by Frederick Eaton, Otis Chandler, the publisher of the Los Angeles Times, was one of the people who apparently quite clearly was pulling political strings to get the Los Angeles Aqueduct constructed, and then St. Francis Dam constructed. Yeah, exactly right. Kim has a good point. You fill the big reservoir like that with water, you're going to cause changes in the underlying soil conditions, saturating the soils, and the groundwater profile is going to change. And so Michael asks, did Eaton have to retire after the failure? I don't think he was forced out. That's kind of hard to say. Frederick Eaton may have told him, look, somebody's got to go. and it's going to be you, not me. um, but I don't think he was forced out. I think he was, from what I have read, he was truly devastated by it, and he just withdrew. But he didn't go to jail or anything like that. Okay. Well, I hope you found this a little bit interesting. It's an important uh, incident and unfortunate incident in our engineering history, and we have learned from it. As a matter of fact, as another example, I talked about this incident being a major force in California for the establishment of engineering registration laws. Another major result, to a large extent, of this incident was the state of California, the department that I was originally with, the Department of Water Resources. Um, Established at about the time I was there, a department of, or not a department, but an office of dam safety, was charged with inspecting and approving or ordering modifications of dams in California. And there are a slew of dams all over California. Um, the way the climate and the water works in California is the weather comes in from the Pacific Ocean, and in the clouds, moisture. They hit the Sierra Nevada mountains. That forces the uh, clouds up, the water condenses out. So the bottom line is that there's a lot of water that falls on the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then it runs off. The majority of it runs on the down on the western slope into the Central Valley. A lesser amount uh, uh, flows to the on the eastern slope, which was where the Owens Valley was, on the eastern slope. But anyway, all right, we're here at the end of the time. So again, I just want to thank you very much for letting me chat with you. I hope this gave you some stuff to think about. With that, I'm just going to sign off. So have a nice rest of the day. Thanks a lot. Bye.